All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday to you. As always, pray that you had a great day. I know here on the East Coast, at least in the Maryland area, we just had a big thunderstorm roll through. Sounds like it's lighting up now, but it was pretty heavy. It's heard a lot of thunder for a while in my area. Didn't actually see lightning, but I heard a lot of thunder. And I heard the wind and I heard the rain hitting the pane. Um, so hopefully everybody was able to stay safe and dry during that period, probably about an hour or so, I guess. But it sounds like it's passed over. But I don't know if there's going to be any more bans or anything like that. But like I've always been taught, we need to enjoy the liquid sunshine, just like the sunny sunshine. Hmm. So, welcome. Hope you had a great weekend as well. Really excited about our conversation that we're going to have tonight because we do have a nice guest for you tonight. Um, just wanted to, speaking about weather, make sure that we're praying for those on the West Coast. They're going to have they've been dealing with a lot of severe weather as well. Um, I know in some regards they're happy to get a lot of rain because they've been in a drought for so long. But when you've been in a drought that long and then all of a sudden you have a downpour, it's not always a good thing right away. But hopefully that's going to help replenish some of the rivers over there and the waterways that have been dry for so many months. I forget exactly how many months there it's been um, since they had their last rainfall. So it's a blessing in some regards, but at the same time, it could be pretty treacherous for them at the moment. So please um, take some time to pray for them as they're going through that period as well. Y'all I like to see who's here. I always see, hey, Tanya, I see that you're on, but if you are in the conversation tonight, make sure you say something in comments as well so that I know that you're there. And I'm asking that you be engaged as well tonight. This month, one of the things, because every month they call something new, but one of the things that has been focused on for this month is behavioral health, and especially mental health in many regards. So I've been kind of like having different guests on that talks about these things. And one of the guests that I wanted to bring on met her through another app and thought that she would be a great guest after I looked at her webpage and she told a little bit about her story. I thought her story would be compelling for many of you because I know many of us have suffered from different things in the past. So I'm asking, make sure you get involved with this conversation, share the page now if you can, just so that others can get involved, ask questions along the way. But I want to introduce to you Miss Robyn Moore, no relation, um, but um, very happy to have her on. I want her to share her story and tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll get into some questions that I think that you might find helpful. Hey Tanya, nice to see you on as well. Y'all just make sure y'all let me know that you on, and I'll greet you if I'm able to do so. So hi Robyn, thank you so much for joining. Um, One, I'm happy that you reached out, and I'm happy that we were able to connect. Um, and I'm really looking forward to what you're going to share with us tonight. So, before I go any further, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, things like that, and what brought you to this point in your journey in life.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. Super excited about that. Yeah, so I am a certified life coach, and what really brought me into this field is my life story. I particularly work with Christian women, helping them find abundance in their life, right, in their life and their relationships through the renewing of their mind. What I've found is so many of the scriptures in the Bible we know, right, that he tells us we can be transformed by the renewing of our minds. We know
Hmm.
that, but the practicality of it sometimes is the difficult part. And that's
Right.
what I found, true in my life. And so what I help women with now is what I learned through my journey. And that helped me overcome, losing 70 pounds, getting off 11 prescription medications.
Wow.
But even the bigger thing for me was, the depression and anxiety that started really young for me. I was suicidal from the time that I was in junior high. And I was able to hide it for a while until I was in college. And then, a few extra things added on there, my parents' divorce and a few other things, and I really couldn't hide it anymore. I ended up going in the hospital. I was in and out of hospitals for several years. I cut, I mean, just a lot of self harm things, and it was through this renewing of my mind that I was able to ditch all of that anxiety, all of that depression, do as I said, I'll get off all those medications. And now, even as a single woman, I adopted an amazing little boy at birth who's now 7, and live
Wow.
a life that, had you told me back then, there's no way you could have convinced me that was possible.
Yeah, yeah. So, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit more and being just a little more transparent, what was that final thing? Because, like you said, there's a lot of things that were going on, but it wasn't like it was something that was instantaneous. Was there like the proverbial last straw that like really just took you over the edge?
Yeah, I think it became a point of, like I said, hiding it for so long. So I was just stuffing it and stuffing it. And then, I'm in college, a new surrounding, a new territory. And then, like I mentioned, my parents, when we're going through a divorce, that was probably kind of the last thing that was
Hmm.
like, I just can't hide this anymore, right? I just can't deal with all this. I knew at that point I had to let somebody know how bad it was, or I wasn't going to make it. And that's
Hmm.
kind of what put me in the hospital.
Right. So you mentioned about renewing your mind. Um, so did you grow up in a Christian household, or is that something that you got grabbed hold of later on once you realized that you needed additional help?
Yeah, I did grow up in a Christian household. I grew up in what I would call maybe a religious household, as far as it was salvation through grace. But after that, it felt like it was works, right? It felt like,
Mm,
I was taught that it was up to me. And so I was always striving. On the outside, it looked great. I was valedictorian, most likely to succeed, successful in every way on the outside. But inside, that pressure and that performance, and always being on, just was really digging deep into my life.
okay. All right. So, um, how much did your spiritual life, because you mentioned it felt more like works, was that all that it really comprised of, your relationship? Do you think that that's why, or do you think that maybe contributed to your levels of anxiety, as opposed to it helping you? Um, how would you say your spiritual aspect? I'm just trying to get a feeling of where that was at the time.
Yeah, so I started learning when I was in college more about the relationship, right? And that was very different, as from what I described before. But it's kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of times people are used to the story of, here was my life, it was a wreck, and I found Jesus and everything changed, right? But I
Right.
found Jesus really early, but I just had, a lot of life circumstances. And really, it was that inner negative self talk, right? I told myself I was unloved, I was unworthy, all those things. That's really what built it up for me. So I was seeking Jesus all along. I came to know him in a better way for sure when I was in college, when I learned about the relationship. But it was really a seeking for me all along the way, but just not being able to find the tools, kind of feeling ashamed, right, that my life didn't look prettier
Hmm.
when I knew Jesus, and I was seeking him, but I just, I didn't have the tools at the time to really overcome that negative inner self-talk and the things that I needed to succeed in life.
Okay. So what was it that finally started you on the path of renewing your mind?
Yeah, so I went to see a doctor, another doctor, and came out, and the doctor was like, I'm going to put you on it was prescription number 11, no,
Wow.
12, it would have been number 12 at this point, and told me that I had borderline personality disorder.
Hmm.
And so I remember calling my mom, and she was like, Robyn, you don't have borderline personality disorder. And it was my first time that I thought, oh, wait, so what the doctors are telling me actually might be wrong. Like I can question that. And so that's kind of what started the process. And then through that, I learned I can actually question myself. Like, how
Mm.
about all these things I've been telling myself all these
Wow.
years? They don't line up to what the Bible says I am, what God says I am. And so how do I make that shift? How do I make that change? And then when I started making that change, I mean, that's when life really started turning around. I had been telling myself that for a very long time. And so, right, it took some consistency in the beginning, but then, which I've now learned, I didn't know anything about it at the time, but through neuroscience, right? Like that's what we do. We can create new, essentially, ruts in our brain as we practice new thoughts and new ways of
Hmm.
thinking. I didn't know that at the time, but I've since learned, right, it's amazing how God created our brains that are, to be able to create, really transform our lives through our thinking.
Yeah, yeah, and I've always found it amazing. One of the things I do, I teach some leadership classes, and one of the things, people don't always. I talk about emotional intelligence, and part of that is really understanding your own emotions and going even deeper on understanding why you may react in a particular situation, and what drives that. And oftentimes, I'll ask as one of the exercises, give me three things, some three positive things about yourself. And I'm always amazed how the participants in the class have a hard time thinking of three things. Well, most of them, I won't say all of them, but many of them have a hard
Mhm.
time. And again, one of the questions is who talks to you the most? It's not about those other people outside. It's really about the person that talks to you the most is you. And you have to be aware of what you're saying to yourself, not just what other people are feeding into you. Now, definitely, you need to be aware of what people are saying to you and what's going to your eye gate and your ear gate, what you're watching and things like that, and who's in your circle. But you also have to be aware of what you're saying to yourself. And I think that's something that we have to just come to grips with because we start doing it at a very young age. Certainly, a parent, a sibling, a teacher, could say something negative, and then you just keep repeating that to yourself. But we have to really start to think about, what is it that we are saying to ourselves that keeps us in this cycle of I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, I'm not that, or things like that. And like you said, retrain ourselves to speak positive. And one of the assignments I give them when they leave, I don't know how many actually do it, but in that morning when you wake up and think about 3 to 5 things about yourself that are positive. Even if it's the same 3 to 5 things every day, just keep saying those things about yourself, and that helps, I believe, renew your mind.
Yeah, it definitely does. And as you speak, so many things that we do, right? The first 7 years of our life are so influential on those beliefs. And, beliefs are really just repetitive thoughts. That's all it is. But like you said, somebody speaks that in, but what I find is that people then walk with that the rest of their life. But at the point that we're adults, right, we can go back and we can question those things, right? We can look at it with a new lens. We can say, is that
That's
really
good.
true? But if we don't take a minute and are intentional with that, we just let those beliefs and those thoughts carry us through life thinking this is just the way I am.
Hmm.
Right, but it's not true. It's not just the way you are. It's because of the thoughts, the things that we're thinking, and we can step in there and change those and see our lives go in a completely different trajectory.
Yeah, that's good. Because I don't think many people think about that. They think that we are able to challenge what we believe even with ourselves, and we can change that thinking. And
Mhm.
we just accept what we've always heard, even from ourselves. So I
Mhm.
mean, already, I think that's a good lesson that some of us need to learn and grab hold to.
Yeah, and
Um,
I
go ahead.
kind of really think of those feelings, when our feelings all 100% of the time come from our thoughts, right? And so when you're feeling those negative feelings, it's not that life, right, you're not going to have things, people are going to die and you're going to have thoughts that make you sad. And it's not like you're not going to want to feel sad ever, right? You're going to have some of those. But if you're having those what I would call, negative emotions that you're feeling and are keeping you down, that is a huge sign, right, that you're thinking. is not on straight. And that's not the God we serve, right? That's not what he wants for our life. And so
Right.
then that's when so many times people say, I don't know if it's me or from God. Well, think about the emotion you're having. Is that one that God, professes in your life? Because if not, right, then it's probably an incorrect thinking.
Yeah. 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 That's something that's when I try to encourage others and they're struggling with that. How do I know whose voice it is? I ask, does it line up with God's word? Does it line up with God says you are? And if it's anything other than that, then you know that's coming from someplace that's false. If it's completely contrary to what God says about you, you know that is a negative voice speaking to you.
Mhm.
That's the wrong voice to listen to. Okay. So, um, you being a life coach, what so, well, before I go there, you said that you suffered depression and anxiety. Do you think all of the negative talk is what brought that on initially, or is that just something that gradually grew over time, or is that something that was just always there with you?
No, I think it's life events, right? It's things that happen, it's things that people said that made me create those stories because that's what they are. Our thoughts are our stories that we create about whatever happened or that was said to us. And so those stories, right, I created early on and not knowing to question those, I just continued to live in those stories, right? And like I mentioned before, I held it in inside. So I didn't voice that to someone that could have possibly told me differently. I don't know if I would have believed it or not, right? But they could have possibly told me, something differently that I could have start making those shifts. And I think I mean, I think, some of the life events are more traumatic, of course, than others. But I think everyone has events in their lives that bring on that negative inner self talk if we're not really careful and if we're not watching that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, just want to announce. I see you, Letitia. I see you, Tony. Appreciate y'all being on again. If you're on the web page, make sure that if you're on the Keep It Real stream, make sure that you type in a question if you have a question for Robyn. I also will put up the phone number if you want to call in and talk directly to her. She's agreed to do that as well. So call 410-513-9499 if you are so inclined. Um, so going a little bit further in your journey, um, what is it that made you decide to become a life coach? What drew you down that path? And what were you doing before you became a life coach?
Yeah, I still actually am working in accounting and finance,
Okay.
and then also have my business on top of that. But yeah, so really, I've thought for a long time that accounting and finance, right? That it's not fulfilling to me. I'll just say it that way, right? And so I went on a search to try to figure out really what it is that I'm made to do. I've always wanted to help people. I don't believe that I went through the story of my life to keep it to myself. I believe it was meant to help and to serve others. And so I actually hired a coach that worked, career life coach, and did an extensive 3 months with her. And everything pointed to, right, my personality, surveys with my friends, my giftings, everything pointed to life coaching. My
Mm,
friends and family were like, you've been doing this your whole life. Like, this is what, right? That makes total sense that that's what you would do as a career. And so I went, sought out a program, did a certification, to further educate myself, and have been doing it since and absolutely love it and do feel like it's really what my calling is.
okay, good. Um, a question or a thought from Tony says, "How did you know that it's God speaking to you for sure when you know that you don't want to do things for yourself?"
Mm. Well, I think it's always interesting that the things that we can't see the things for ourselves that we would tell our friends or our buddies, right? And so, you think about
Mm,
I don't want to do these things, right? Or I feel, that I'm unworthy, or those kind of things. Is that really, is that true? Is that really true, right? That's the question I always ask myself. Is it serving me, right? Is it pointing others and myself towards Christ, right? And if it's not, then what is it that I could think that would serve Christ and others, right?
Right.
Negative thinking, those emotions that cause us to be sad, depressed, lonely, right? Those just aren't of the Lord. Those aren't from Him. And so then we have to ask ourselves, why am I feeling this? What thought am I thinking that's bringing on this feeling? And does
Right.
that, as you said, Mark, does that line up with the Word of God? If it's creating a negative feeling, I'm going to step out there and say no,
Yeah.
it doesn't. And so then that's when you can kind of, guide that thought, that thinking process.
Yeah. And we can talk, and it just seems to be so easy. Um, just to say, well, is this uh, a dark thought? Is this a negative thought? Does negative thoughts come from God? And yet, some of us still have problems with that, and we still struggle with that. Uh, and I don't want anybody to feel bad if they don't always feel like they understand or they know that voice. Um, but I would say, maybe just start with that very basic thought of, okay, is this taking me to a positive place? And how long have I stayed there? I'm not a trained counselor or anything like that, but it's just kind of how I am. When it's like I'm really depressed. I mean, I'll be down and things like that. Everybody gets down, and
Hmm.
everybody experiences anxiety from time to time. Um, but when I realize I've been there too long, it's like, okay, this isn't working for me, and
Hmm.
I can't stay here because I know this isn't where God wants to keep me. So, for some it may seem elementary, but for others it's a real struggle. It's
Yeah, it absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've been there. I know right, what a struggle it was for me. And the thing that I've learned too is that condemnation, if we're beating ourselves up about our thinking or our feeling, right, that's not from God, right? It's
hmm
it's we have
hmm
to look at it with curiosity versus condemnation. So curiosity of
mm,
why is this happening, right? What is bringing, are there certain situations that's bringing on this feeling? Well, what is my thought about that situation, right? And so it's nothing. Look, it's not a bed of roses for anyone, right? Like I have my own life coach because I can't see my
right.
own brain like I can see others, right? Because it's so, when you're so close and it's so personal, you
hmm
can't really see outside of it at the moment, right? And that's why it's helpful, to be with someone that can walk you through that and help you see it. Because, right, it's well, our thought seems 100% real. So what I like to explain to people is the event or the circumstances is something that can be proven in the court of law, right? Like everybody that sees it would agree to it. Well, most of the things that we're thinking, we say it as if they're real, as if they're fact. But
mm,
very few of them, very few of our thoughts are really factual, right? They're all coded with this, this lens, this story, due to our life, our
right.
past, what we've been telling ourselves. So everything is coded. And so that's the importance of
hmm
walking through it with someone else. So they
yeah
can be
yeah
real and honest and help you see what you're not seeing.
yeah yeah because you're right. Our worldview, our life experiences gives us a particular uh, spectrum in which we see things. But having somebody from the outside looking in can help us a lot. So you said you have your own life coach. Um, One, tell me the difference between saying going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a counselor. What's the difference between that and a life coach?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain it is most counselors or psychologists are past focused, and I'm future focused, right? I
Mm,
help people get to where they want to be.
that's
Doesn't
good.
mean that the past doesn't ever come up, right?
hmm
Because we
hmm
we do have those, deep-seated beliefs from things. But instead of spending all of our time talking about the past, I'm helping people get to their future.
Right. And what's the big question that you found? And I'm just guessing this. Is there a question that you have found that you ask that people tend to most struggle with, or the question that you ask that really turns on that light for them that makes them think about what are the next steps? Because I think sometimes people aren't able to future. They don't think about the future. They get stuck at where they're at, or like you said in the past. What is that question that you ask? And I don't want to take all your business away because you're answering the question now. But what is that question that you ask that kind of like you see makes them, that light go off for them?
Yeah, I think the first thing really in healing is believing that things can be different, right? Because when we believe, like I said, a belief is a repetitive thought. When we open up our eyes to that things can be different, then that's really when it opens up the possibilities of being able to really work on the things that are holding people back from getting where they want to be. And I kind of like to describe it as, we all have this purpose, right? This light, you know, that God gave us. But we have things happen in life. It's kind of like bricks being stacked on that fire, on that light, right? And so you have to kind of get those bricks off, right? That negative inner self-talk, those beliefs that are holding us back, so that our light can really shine. So it can really
Hmm.
shine through and we can walk through and be exactly who God called us to be.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So with all that being said, what is the big uh, piece? And you've given so much already, but what is the struggle, that internal struggle? Where do we have to first turn in and look at? What would you
The
say is the first place? The first place that we have to look inward at. Where would you
mm,
say that that's really? What is it really? I know Tony, and I'm just thinking about this because Tony said, how do you know for sure that your desires are in the will of God when you know that your ultimate desire is to please God?
mhm.
Um, what do you say to those who are not quite there yet?
That are not quite
Quite
to
there where they're thinking about, I need to please God in everything that I do, because
mm,
because I think that takes a sense or a bit of maturity, spiritual maturity, for people to get to that point. You know what I mean? Someone that may just be discovering Christ or just get into, being a Christian. I don't necessarily know. They may have a desire, but they may not fully understand what that desire is. They may feel like, yes, I want to please God, but they don't necessarily know how to please God, especially if they're still carrying all this negative stuff. You know what I
uh-huh.
mean? When they coming
Yeah.
into the body. So how would you help people understand that internal side of it?
Yeah. So, right, the story of the gospel of what Jesus did for us is all based around love, right? And so I think so often we focus on, like you said, what we do, or whatever, what we're going to do for the Lord and how we're going to love other people. But there's no better way to start practicing and learning and applying the love of Christ than learning to love ourselves.
Hmm.
Right. And so instead of focusing, in my opinion, instead of focusing on what we should be doing, shouldn't be doing, all that, if we can focus on how much God loves us and start applying that in our lives and start loving ourselves to that, we'll never be able to live to that capacity, right? We don't understand
Right,
to love.
right.
But as we start releasing those things that keep us from loving ourselves, right, then we can love him more. We
Hmm.
can love our neighbors more, right? The two biggest commandments.
Right,
And with
right,
that, everything else will flow.
right.
I think it's really based in love.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it all comes down to. I mean, he demonstrated his love. The Father demonstrated his love by giving us his Son, and his Son demonstrated his love by going to the cross for us. You know, and then, like you said, the command was to love God first, and then love one another. And so, when you have someone that has that worldview that they may not have necessarily experienced love in that sense, you know. Um, I'm just trying to figure out what is the message you have to give. How do they really start to the ABCs of, okay, I know God loves me, but how do I really learn to love myself?
Hmm.
I think that's the real burden that many will have. especially when they have listened to all these negative things inwardly and outwardly, when they've
Uh-huh.
heard nothing but the negatives.
Uh-huh. It may seem really simple, right?
Hmm.
But it comes down to a decision. And so with the work that I do, when I am able to show people, not just like I'm going to explain a little bit here, but when I can do it personally to somebody's exact situation and show them how their thought is creating their feeling, which creates their actions, which create their results, and their
Hmm.
results tie back to their thoughts 100% of the time. So when we start digging into those thoughts and I am able to show them what they're creating to them personally and independently, then they get to decide, do they want for things to be differently? And if they do, then we work on what those thoughts are and how they can apply them to their
Right.
lives. And so though it does seem simple, it in the end comes down to a decision. Once you have the tools you need to put into place, then it's a decision whether you're going to do that or not.
Right. 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 And again, I guess you have to think about, well, what is the future? What is it that I am anticipating to happen? Um, One of the things that I talk about in like the emotional intelligence class that I do is um, E plus R equals O, which E being the event, whatever that event may be in your life, plus how you respond equals the outcome.
Mhm.
And you can seldom control the event. Events happen, things come your way. Even the events of your past, those things, again, I'm just thinking about the negative things, why people find themselves in depression, why people find themselves in anxiety. What are those things, those events may have been that have caused you to get into that particular spot? And certainly those aren't the only ailments or only things that people have to contend with. But that's just kind of what we're talking about today. But it's really about how do you respond? And the only way you'll be able to know how to respond is how you think.
Mhm.
You know, it's how you think, how you manage your emotions, things like that. That's going to determine your outcome. But you have to kind of think about, well, what do I want my outcome to be? What
Mhm.
am I expecting my outcome to be? What is the outcome that I want? So it's like just the event happened, but then you kind of have to work your way back from, well, this is what I want. Therefore, I have to respond this way. I have to
Mhm.
start thinking this way. I have to start feeling this way to get the positive outcome that I want.
Mhm. And I think what's helpful for a lot of people is if they're feeling, let's say, sad, for instance, what is a feeling they would rather be having? And then once they know what that feeling is, right? What is a thought about whatever that event, that circumstance is, right? That would bring about that feeling. And
Yeah,
then when they're thinking that and they have that feeling, then they're going to produce the actions. They're going to stop doing the things they don't want to, and they're going to start doing the things that they do want to get the results that they want.
absolutely. Um, Tanya quotes Jeremiah 1:5. It says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations." And I think that's something that that's just something else we have to keep in mind. You know, we talked about how God loved us, but He loved us so much that even before we were born, He kind of already knew who we were going to be. He already had thoughts about us. He already loved us before we became, and He has, like He says, He has plans for us that are good, that are prosperous. And those are like just some of those things that we have to continually tell ourselves.
Hmm. And I think about we never, I won't say never. It's not like anybody probably, but most of us, right, wouldn't look at a baby and see anything but um, uh, somewhat right, something that's there to be loved and to
Hmm.
be treasured, right? But somehow as we continue in life, we tend to base that love and being cherished on what we've done or not done. But the truth is that perfection, that love, that lovable being that God created in the beginning, that never changes, right?
Hmm.
It's not based on what we do or don't do. And I think a lot of people can get stuck there, right? Because they can think, well, if this had been different or if I had reacted differently and all those things, but really all of it, really, you're loved and you're cherished and you're perfect just as you are, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you were born, and that doesn't change for us.
yeah, yeah. It reminds me of a post I just read a couple of days ago, and I can't say exactly how it went, but it basically came down to that God was saying to us, "I love you because of who you are, not because of what you do."
Hmm.
And basically, I mean, that's just saying really, it's not about what you do in ministry. It's not about what you fail at. It's not about what you pass at. It's about I love you despite all of that. I love you because of who you are, and I created you to be mine.
Hmm.
That's what it really comes down to.
Hmm.
You know, and if we can all keep that in mind, and I had to respond, I was like, sometimes I need to be reminded because oftentimes we fall short and we know we fall short and we start beating ourselves up, you know, but it's not what we do necessarily about, whether it be in ministry or even within our own lives. He still loves us despite all of those things. He knew when he created us, even before we even came, that we was going to have these things that we would have to contend with. But it's supposed to build us, build our character, make us stronger, and make us more like his son.
Yeah, and the truth is, we're in a fallen world, right? And so, things happen all the time that are even in His plan, right? Because we live in a fallen world, we have free will, and so that the things that happen to us has nothing to do with His. I think so many people can think, why did God let that happen? You're right. He must not love me or care about me. Well, no, we're in a fallen world. He loves us completely, but he gave us free choice. He gave everyone free choice. And so the opposite of that is with that free choice, people are going to do things that aren't right, right? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
going to affect us. And we're going to do the same. We're going to do things that aren't right with that free will.
yeah.
But it has nothing to do with his love for us.
Yeah, it doesn't change his level of love for us. The way he loves us today is no different than what he did, how he loved us yesterday, or how he's going to love us tomorrow. His love
Mm-hmm.
is constant. We're the ones that kind of like waffle a little bit, and today I love you, and tomorrow not so much. It's like that's a human thing. You
Right.
know, but our capacity for love is so much different than his capacity of love. We
Yeah,
fall very short of his capacity for love.
that's right. That's right.
Um, so with all that, and I think you've given us a lot to think about, and I think you've given us a lot of insight um, as far as it's really our thoughts that we have to really think about. And when it comes to being a life coach, and I know that you hear a lot about that about life coaches now. I know I've seen some people getting certified with it. How do you decide, or what do you suggest people should do to determine what's the right life coach for them?
Yeah, I think the best way is, most coaches, I know myself, I offer a free right discovery call just to talk to you to make sure we're a right fit for each other, see that we both agree. And so I think the best way is for people to get on the phone with some people that they like, on their website or they been referred to, and just talk to them and see which one's right for them. I feel like they'll have a peace about that
Hmm.
when they meet the right person.
Yeah. I definitely feel, uh, I don't have a formal life coach, but I have a lot of people around me that I talk to. I'm thankful that I have a relationship with my bishop, my pastor. Um, I'm thankful that I have like former coworkers or former supervisors that are kind of decided to hang out in my life and
Hmm.
still kind of feed into me. And I've had counseling. I've gone to counselors, and both for personal and marriage. I'm not ashamed of it because I think you always need to think about those things. But you're right; those type of things uh, they kind of focus on the past and why are you at where you're at, what has driven you to where you're at. Whereas I really do think that a life coach is there to really help you um, think about the future and help you discover how do you get there, or what steps do you need to take, or what do you need to consider. But I don't think they're there to tell you. I think they're there to kind of guide you,
Yeah,
facilitate.
I best describe it as I'm an expert. I like to describe it. We're sitting on a couch and I'm telling you what you're creating with your thoughts, with your brain, right? Like my job is to help reveal that to you. And then it's up to my clients if they want to change that. And if they do, right, then we discover together what are some ways for that to change, what
Yeah.
works best for each person.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, again, I agree with you, Tony. It's all about our motives. You know, why do you want to do what you're doing? And again, you have to think about what is the outcome? What is it that you're really trying to get done, and for what purpose? And I
Mm-hmm,
think sometimes people don't want to think about their motives.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes I think that some people they just see the outcome, maybe because they are seeing other people, other people have houses, cars, whatever, and they think that's what they want, but they don't necessarily think about what does it take to get there.
mm-hmm.
What are those steps between where you're at right now and what do you think you need to do to get there? Because it's not like you're going to find a lamp and rub it and then it just appears.
Right,
You
right.
know. Okay. I was going to say something else. So I forget. I lost it just that quick. Um, so you talked about what do you look for in a life coach? Are there any particular questions that you think that should be asked of a life potential life coach? And does a life coach have to be necessarily certified, or is it just somebody that you trust to speak into your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for each person. Anybody can call themselves a life coach without any training, and I think it's like anything, right? I think it's better to go to someone, personally that's been trained and has put in, has all that education and all that practice lined up. That's comes with that certification. There are all types of certifications. Some people can go spend an hour and be certified, or you can take close
Hmm.
to a year, like my certification was. And so, those might even be questions to ask, like, where were you certified, or, what did that certification look like? But I also think it's important with somebody to connect with somebody, possibly with like stories. Like, is this something
Hmm.
that you've learned on paper? Is this something you've learned,
Right.
through life? I think the combination of the two are usually the best.
Yeah.
But it needs to be something, someone you feel comfortable with, right? It needs
Yeah.
to be somebody, because if you're not going to be open and honest, right, you're not going to be able to get to the depth that you're going to be able to get to with somebody that you're comfortable with. For me personally, as a believer, that's an important part of my life. And so, when I'm looking for my coaches, right, I'm looking for somebody that lines up with their faith, because I think that's really important to bring into it. So if there's anything that's really important, I would say don't be afraid to ask, right? Ask the questions, ask what's important to you. Be honest up front in your original
Yeah.
call.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say so? Like you seem to specialize based on your own life experience, anxiety, depression, things like that. So, and you said with Christian women, are you more prone to just work with those type women, or do you talk to other women that you may not have necessarily experienced in your own life, but you still are able to guide?
Absolutely. I mean, with my training, and some of our stories do not line up, right, line for line, but they're very similar, right? They're about, perseverance, or overcoming, or right, a tenacity, different things like that. So when I say Christian women, right, that's my niche. That's the majority of the people I work with, right? I work with men, I work with non-Christians, but that's kind of just where I hone in to that. That's where my biggest heart is.
Right.
And I help people with all types of things. I help people with, discovering what they want to do with their life as far as their job, people lose weight. I've experienced that, but my main focus, my passion, I guess you would say,
Right.
is really Christian women, and just really helping them overcome overcome the things in their lives, so they can
Okay.
live. I'm very, like I said before, as coming through, my passion comes from coming through someone that knew the Lord, but was stuck, right? Was so stuck and not being able to live my life abundantly, like I feel like the Lord, has allowed us to do. And so I really have a heart for other Christian women that are
Right.
trying to get out of that. I think so many don't even voice what's going on with them, right?
Yeah.
Because they're ashamed and you know, and that's you got to get out there. You got to be honest, you know, to
Yeah.
let somebody
Yeah.
help you so that you can live your best life. You know, we only get one, you know, one shot here on earth, right?
Right. Right.
And so let's live it to their fullest because I think that's what, you know, God's heart is for our lives.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I kind of launched this particular blog because, we have to learn how to keep it real. We have to learn how to have those honest conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, too many of us, we hide, we put on that mask on, Sundays or when we go to the church meetings or, Bible study, whatever. And we're not really, even though we're getting knowledge as far as the Bible's concerned, we're still suffering inside. We're still not, truly revealing ourselves to others. And I do believe, and not just because I've been told or I've been taught, I believe that God created us to be relational.
Mm-hmm.
I really do believe that God wanted us. I mean, he had Adam, but he said it's not good for him to be by himself. So he gave Eve so that he would have somebody to communicate with, somebody to share with, somebody to be vulnerable with, somebody to be transparent with. They was naked and unashamed. And I don't think that's not because of the clothing issue. It was just that they were before one another completely open. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's how God wanted us to be all along. And when we come into this Christian relationship, I believe that's what he wants for all of us. He says, or Jesus prayed, Father, make them one, even as you and I are one. And certainly there's an open relationship communication in the Godhead. You know, um, Seldom did Christ say, only the Father knows. Okay. But that was while he was here on earth. I'm sure now he knows all, other than exactly when, and I'm just guessing when the father's going to say, stand up, it's time for you to go.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the one and only thing that he does not know intimately. I don't know. He may know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what he wants for us. I think he wants us to be open and honest with one another. Certainly you can't tell everybody everything because not everybody can handle everything. Not everybody is mature enough to handle everything that you're going through. But I do believe that God puts certain people in your life that you can be open and honest and vulnerable, and that you can share your things with, and it's not going to go any further than them. But I think too often, because of things in the past, we're too afraid to be that vulnerable, to be that open.
Mm-hmm.
But God is calling us to be real about it.
Yeah, he definitely is. You know, he talks about, right, we're adopted into the family of Christ, right? And the families that you see functioning in the best way are those that are relational, right? And it doesn't have to be just with our families. Our families can be, right, the people we go to church with, it can be our friends. Like there's different family units, right?
Right.
But Satan loves to live in the darkness, right? He loves that those years that I hid, that I kept it, all it did is grew bigger and bigger and bigger,
Mm-hmm,
right? He
mm-hmm.
loves that. So we have to have those people in our life that we're honest with, and we need those people that are going to be honest with us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't need just those people that are going to, you know, join into the mix of complaining or whatever, right, is going
Right.
on for us, right? We need people that are going to be honest and show us and help us grow. And they can't do that if we're not honest, right? If we're not honest with where we are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we need to beware of those with the flattering tongue. That's what it says. Those who have flattering tongues, you got to be aware. Um, so listen, y'all. I want y'all. Got a few more minutes here before we go. If you have a question, go ahead and type in your question. I can see if you're on my page. I can see the question, or if you're on the Keep It Real conversation page stream, then you can type your question in there as well. But please. Ask your question, if you will. This is Ms. Moore's um, webpage here. Go here. You'll see some testimonials out there. You'll see, how to talk to Robyn, and you see her wonderful child. What's his son's name, if you don't mind saying it in public?
No, it's Jaden. It means Jehovah has heard.
Amen. Amen. How old was he when you adopted him?
He's been with me since birth.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, wonderful. So you, if hey guys, if you are looking for a coach, you've had the opportunity to listen to her. She also let me know that if you come out here, there is a giveaway on her webpage right now that you can get out there as well. But you can book appointments to be with her as well. So again, you only have a few more moments. You have a question or direct question you want to ask. This will be the time to do it because I don't want to keep her all night. Um, Not that I'm not enjoying the conversation because I truly am. Um, so I often ask my guests, especially those that I know are believers, three questions. All right. The first being, uh, what was your conversion experience? So you say you grew up in a Christian household. What was your actual conversion experience? When did you accept Christ?
Yeah, I accepted Christ really early, at 5. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah," but then later they're like, "I don't think I really accepted him." Obviously, I grew in my walk and I learned more and more, but I truly believe that I understood, um, what it meant that I believed in him truly to accept salvation. So at the age of 5,
Okay, at the age of 5.
yeah.
Okay, and there's some people I've heard people argue that that's too young. 4 or 5, but I've been taught, and I truly believe once you're at the age of when you know right from wrong and you're able to understand the gospel story, you know, you know, you can be saved at that point. And a lot of people, you know, I know a lot of people that got saved at that early age, 5, 6, or 7, but then because uh, they've made mistakes along the way since then, because they didn't really understand sanctification and salvation and, how to grow in Christ and things like that. Or maybe they were just mishandled along the way. Um, they believe that they weren't really saved at that age. And then they come back down to thinking that they need to be saved again. And I believe once you're saved, once you make that honest confession in your heart, you know, and you believe in your heart and you confess with your mouth that the Lord Jesus is Savior, then you are saved. And although you may walk away and you may not do all that you're supposed to do, certainly you can go and rededicate yourself back to Christ. But once you're even at that young, tender age, you are saved and you are safe and you know that you're going to go to heaven, even at that young age. So that's your conversion story. Um, what was the instance or the incident that happened that made you realize that God was your personal God? So at 5, I doubt that you had a lot of experiences with God,
Hmm.
you know. But what was that one experience where you realized that God is your personal God?
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if I remember an exact experience, but I remember the time in my life, and it was when I was in college, and I really started learning about the relationship part of Jesus, right? And the relationship that I could have with him versus what I needed to do to please him, which was some of that earlier. So I really think in college that's when it really started to open up for me that it was that really Christianity is about a relationship with him.
Okay. All right. So before I ask you the last question, um, there's a question. Um, how did you know that what you're doing? I feel. How do you know what you are doing is right? I feel that like I'm in a box and I can't do what I desire. I feel like my gifts are not being able to be used as they should because I'm in a box placed by others. Wow. How would you respond to that?
Yeah. Um, I think the box happens so often, right? That we're boxed in by others. And I think where a lot of people can get stuck with what they're doing in their life is trying to figure out the actions, right? And the how to get there. But I think it begins in focusing on a little bit of a broken record here, but it's focusing on those thoughts. And so, what you believe God has called you to do, start speaking that into your life. Start speaking what he's called you to do. And then with that, the actions and figuring it all out will come. But when we're focusing on, I'm stuck in a box, this is not fair, this is what these people are doing to me, right? Those are creating emotions that are not going to show us what the actions are, right? It's going to come with that peace and believing and speaking out what it is that God has spoken to your heart. And then the actions and how to get there, it will come.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking, and there's been times I felt that way as well, that I felt like I was trapped or that I was only seen one way. And I come to realize that there is no box. It's almost like the movie The Matrix. There was a point where there was a girl in there, I think it was a little girl, bending a spoon. And then finally he was like, well, how do you know? She was like, don't concentrate on the spoon because really there is no spoon, you know. And it's really about your perception of what's going on. And though you may feel like somebody has put you in a box, you're thinking that you've been placed in this box. That box doesn't really exist, and there's nothing that keeps you from breaking out of the box. It just takes you to make a bold step to do what you believe is the right thing to do. You know,
And maybe it's a gift, right? Maybe it's the gift that is actually going to take you to the spot to make a change. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah,
often, like you said, we're seeing it, and the perspective is right. This may be exactly the thing that is going to get me to where I want to be.
right. Yeah. So don't be afraid to step out the box and prove them wrong. Sometimes that's what it takes. You just take the attitude of, oh, you think this is what it is, well, this is what it really is. You think this is where I'm at, but this is what I really have to offer. You know, and you don't have to do it to be arrogant, or anything like that, but just to say just to yourself, I don't want to stay in this box. I know God has given me other gifts. I need to find a way to operate in those gifts. I need to find a way to operate in how to best utilize that for God's glory. You know, don't I would say just don't worry about that gift. All right. Well, the last question I'll ask before I let you go is if you had one sentence to express who God is, or if you had one sentence where you wanted to give the final message about who God is to you, what would that sentence be?
I think we touched on a little bit earlier, but God is love is not just a sentence. Like, it's powerful. If you can embrace what he did for us and how much, those of us that have children and we love them so much, like, it is not even, tip of the iceberg of what he how he loves us and what he's done for us and how he sees each and every one of us as his children. And if we can really step into that and believe and honor and hear and feel that love, right? There's nothing but great things to happen from that. It's such a powerful love is over, is used all the time. I love ice cream or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But that love, that agape love that God has for us,
yeah,
it can't even, there's not words to describe it,
yeah,
right? And that's even in my believing and my story and what I've experienced, which is so short from what it even really is.
yeah. That's good. That's good. So listen, y'all, once again, here's our website, robynmoorecoaching.com. Feel free to reach out to her, bless her. She has testimonials out there. If you're looking for a life coach, I think she would be a great life coach for so many of you. Be sure to go check her out. Robyn, I truly, I just cut you off. Wait a minute, I clicked the wrong thing. I truly appreciate you coming and joining today and sharing so many wonderful thoughts and insights. I just really do appreciate meeting you, and I hope that we too will continue to keep in contact.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate this. This is great. I enjoyed it as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Hold on just a moment. I'm just going to click you off for a few minutes here. So, hey, y'all, I hope y'all enjoy that conversation. Please make sure you share this conversation like you do with so many others. If you have any other questions, feel free to type them in here. If you have something specific for her, I'll make sure she gets those questions as well. But you can always reach her on her webpage. There is a mechanism there that you can, ask questions and things like that. I do, before I let you go, I want to say thank you all so much over this past year. This coming week, this Wednesday, actually will mark 1 year since my son passed, and I know many of you have prayed for me, prayed for my entire family, and I'll just say on behalf of my family, myself, Felicia, Savannah, that we love and appreciate that. Keep us in prayer, especially this week, because it's a little emotional, but with your prayers and God's help and His blessings and His grace and His mercy and His love has kept us this far, and I know He'll continue. He hasn't brought us this far to leave us. Truly, appreciated that song on Sunday when I was in church. But yeah, he definitely has brought us through this point. Still working with a lot of different things, but God is still able to continue to heal and bless us, and I expect that He'll do that. I look forward to seeing you all next Monday. Please make sure you tune in. Again, share this. If you like the page, if you haven't liked the page, like it. If you haven't followed the page, please make sure you take some time to follow it. If you can write a recommendation about the page, that'd be great. All those things help grow us, just so we can have even bigger and better conversations with more people. And I'm always happy to entertain. If you think somebody's going to be a great guest, love to hear them as well. I'm open and ready to talk to anybody and everybody. So please keep this in mind throughout the week. And thank you again. Know that I love you, but as always, God loves you more. He proved it by sending His Son, and His Son proved how much He loved us by dying on a cross for us and going to the grave and getting up on the third day with all power in His hand. If you don't understand any of that, that's the first time you've heard anything like that. Again, please reach out to the page. Please give us a call at the number you see there. Leave a message if I don't pick up, but I'd love to talk to you about it. Until next week, stay warm because it's starting to get cold out there. Be sure, to, if you have not gotten vaccinated, make sure you get vaccinated. Make sure you get your flu shot. Keep yourself healthy so that we can continue to meet like this on a daily basis. Love you, and I will talk to you real soon.